We're live and recording. Hi
Yay!
and welcome to this lunch party. Hi and welcome to this event for the amazing PAOLA Santiago and the Forest of Nightmares. I'm Carter. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the event coordinator here at Astoria Bookshop, the bookshop hosting this event. If you don't know who we are because you found us through the magic of the internet, we are a bookshop in Astoria, Queens, a borough in New York City. Before we get started, I just want to go through just a few housekeeping things. You will have the opportunity to ask questions during the last 15-ish minutes of this. If you have any questions throughout, you can put them in the chat over on the right, and I'll mark them to be answered during the Q&A portion, but you can also chat with one another in the chat. You can also chat with one another in that chat on the right, but you can also ask questions in the little ask question function, which if you type a question into the chat, it'll prompt you to put it in there. So it's much easier for me to organize, but do it either way, I will find it. But yes, you can chat with each other on the right. We will kick you out if you participate in any trolling, any racial, ethnic, or homophobic slurs. Basically, we ask that you be nice and respectful towards one another. Finally, there is also a button at the bottom down there that offers the option to buy a copy of the book. So whether you live here or don't, we do ship wherever you are. You are able to buy copies from the shop and help support our bookstore and also to have more events like these. So that's fun. So now let's get things started and I'll introduce our fantastic guests. So Tehlor Kay Mejia, who uses she, her pronouns, is an Oregon native in love with the alpine meadows and evergreen forests of her home state, where she lives with her daughter. When she's not writing, you can find her plucking at her guitar, stealing rosemary sprigs from overgrown gardens, or trying to make the perfect vegan tamale. She is the author of PAOLA Santiago and the River of Tears, the YA fantasy novel We Set the Dark on Fire and We Unleash the Merciless Storm. Follow her on Twitter at Tehlor Kay. Graci Kim, who also uses she, her pronouns, is a Korean Kiwi diplomat turned author who writes about the magic she wants to see in the world. The Last Fallen Star was her middle grade debut, and there are 2 more Gifted Clans novels to come, The Last Fallen Moon and The Last Fallen Realm. In a previous life, she used to be a cooking show host, and she once ran a business that turns children's drawings into plushies. When she's not lost in her imagination, you will find Graci drinking flat whites, eating ramen, and most likely hugging a dog or ideally many. She lives in New Zealand with her husband and daughter. Follow her on Twitter at Graci Kim and on Instagram at Graci Kim Writes. So welcome both of our guests. Woo!
Hi! Yay! Graci, I didn't know half of those things about you. Children's plushies, that is the coolest thing I've ever heard.
I'll tell you all about that another time. It's quite a funny story. Okay. I am so excited and so chuffed to be here because I am such a huge fan. Obviously, we're friends, but I love PAOLA, and I'm so happy to celebrate PAOLA Santiago and the Forest of Nightmares with you today. I am a really slow reader. It's like the bane of my existence. And I would try, when I was reading PAOLA 2, I was trying to get my toddler to go to bed early so that I could just read, and she would refuse to go to bed. So I'm just really happy to be here. Before I ask you to pitch the book for us, I was wanting to know how you feel. Like, how does it feel right now to be here with the launch of book 2?
I'm so excited. It's like this book was maybe the hardest book I've ever written. It was like I wrote it in the pandemic, which was my first time. Like I rely so much on being able to like change scenery and go to a new place and like people watch to get new ideas, and so it was just like really like me and the book and the dark night of the soul for a while, which I think comes across better than the, but I feel good. It's so nice. I've been waiting a long time to share it, and so it's nice to finally be able to be like, okay, here it is, we did it. It's, you know, it looks awesome.
It is so beautiful. I wish I had my copy. I only have my first copy. I don't have the second one, but I'm waiting for it.
International shipping, a nightmare. But yeah, thank you for asking. It's been a crazy day in like the funnest, best way. People are just like seem really excited, and I've gotten a bunch of awesome messages. I got to do like 1 billion radio interviews this week. So I think like the pandemic makes everything feel kind of like a non-thing. Like everything that happens, you're like, this doesn't feel as good as normal, but this like felt like a real launch day. So it was exciting.
Wow. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Okay. I have like 1 billion questions to ask you because I just have like so many things I want to know. But can you pitch PAOLA Santiago and the Forest of Nightmares for us?
Yes.
Before we do that.
So it is the second book in the series. Paola is a science-obsessed, very stubborn, black and white thinking kind of girl who really only believes in what she can see and what she can prove. But in the first book, she comes up against the fact that the superstitious, folk tales that her mom has always told her that she scoffed at are actually real and coming to life in her small southwestern town. And so she had this kind of like huge adventure where she had to battle a bunch of them, and she really had her whole worldview upended. And book 2 is a lot more about her inner journey and what she does with this newly fused world where like the science and space and things that she loved before still exist, but also there's this whole new side of her. And also she gets to kind of dig into her family history and why she's the one who's been drawn into this spooky supernatural world. I think that's literally all I can say without giving it away.
Okay, so in book 1, I mean, obviously it's about her adventures and it's about her friendships and her family and all of that. But the thing that I loved the most about book 1 was this balance that you have trying to help her navigate through her journey. She's like you said, the scientific, factual thinker, and then suddenly she's compounded with this world where it's not that at all, and her having to navigate I guess contrasting beliefs, not only from her internal beliefs but from her friends and family and society. Like they're all telling her different things, and she's trying to grow up and find her truth in amongst that. Like I love that message, right, about us finding our own path among the messiness as we try to grow up. In book 2, are there, without giving us spoilers, is there any way that you can, like, are there any key overarching messages like that you're trying to, like, share with us in book 2?
I think the whole, like, you pretty much just summarized the theme of, like, the whole series, which I love. You just, like, really got it. But yeah, I feel like it's so much about, like, the first book is about her just discovering that this world exists in the first place, and that's like a huge shock. So trying to integrate like what she believes about the world with what she's now finding out the world really is, and kind of like trying to smush those two things together. But in book 2, it's really more about her finding her place in this new fused together world. So like it's one thing to be told something exists, but it's another thing to have to go, okay, now where do I fit into this, and what's my responsibility, and like what do I want to do? And at first she didn't want to do any of it. She didn't believe in it. She didn't want to go. She just wanted to try to think of different ways to power rockets. And now at the beginning of the book, she's home. She's kind of back in her more like mundane, grounded 7th grade world where there's adults trying to tell her what to do, and her mom has this new boyfriend she doesn't like, and she's kind of like, man, maybe I was more at home in this supernatural world with all this dangerous stuff happening than I am back in the world I thought I belonged in. So I think it's just like a new onion layer of the same theme, definitely, of just kind of how to mesh all these different concepts into one little person.
Yeah, I mean, 7th grade, it's hard enough as it is, right? Without having to find yourself in this other world.
I know, I literally said in an interview this morning, I was like, I just want to write like POW 17, where she's just like going to therapy and eating plenty of snacks and taking naps, and everyone's like figured out all their drama, like hang out and be boring for a whole book. Not gonna happen, but it would be nice.
It would be nice. So I am fascinated by the concept of dreams, right? Like this whole idea that we sleep and we go to this other place, and nobody no modern science has really figured out what happens when we dream or why. You know, they've got like clues, right? I've been reading books about it recently, but no one really knows.
No.
And this is such a big part of Paola's life and her journey, right? Like she has these kind of almost prophetic kind of dreams that tell her places that she needs to go and gives her clues about the journey that's coming, almost like prophecies. And anyway, it's such a huge part of the story, and well, specifically nightmarish feeling. It's so eerie and scary, but in the best kind of way. I'm just curious, like, is that just something that you're curious about, so you inject it in, or is it something rooted in Mexican folklore, or is it just the way you were brought up? Like, where does that come from?
Yeah, I am. I'm so fascinated too by dreams, because I feel like there are so few things that happen to everyone every day that science hasn't been like, here's why. Like, this is why it happens. This is what its purpose is. For all intents and purposes, it's just like a story, like a little movie you're participating in every night. And like sometimes it feels like it's just the things you're preoccupied by. Like, for instance, I had a dream last night that I woke up and got on my radio tour and I couldn't hear anyone talking, and like the messed up, and they were texting me over and over being like, where are you? We planned this for months. So like obviously that one was pretty easy. Like I had that dream. But like there are so many dreams that you can't explain. My dad actually literally has prophetic dreams. Like he dreamt like that a car crash happened at the bottom of his road when he was a teenager, right before it happened. Like he woke up to the call that there was, and he's texted me and he's like a really stoic, like not supernatural kind of guy. Like you would not think this is the guy that has prophetic dreams, but he really does. He'll text me out of the blue and be like, hey, is this person okay? Or like, hey, just random stuff like that he shouldn't even know. And so I believe it's a real thing. It's partially because of that. That's like such an interesting part of his history that I've always been like, how does that happen and why? But also, I'm a little bit like Pao's mom in that I read tarot cards and I'm into like divination and ancestral spiritual guidance and stuff. And I think that dreams are a time when it feels like the veil between us, like in the physical world, and then the other sort of outside, beyond the veil kind of world, are like very close. So I feel like there are cool and obviously for most of us, we have to decipher those, like, there was a dog in my dream. What does it mean? But for Pao, it's like a little more literal. Like, I understand it means we should get another dog.
Freudian, yeah.
Yes. But she has so much in her dreams that, and for a super scientific kid, she has to start to kind of trust that intuition, which is a really hard road for her.
I can't get over the whole dream thing. The fact that your dad has prophetic dreams. I wonder if it's almost like a sixth sense that we all have, that over time we've just stopped being able to tap into, like we just have forgotten how to use it or something. And for those that can, they just can use it a bit more than others. Maybe it's more like a muscle. The more you use, the better it gets or something.
Yeah, or if you believe, like my dad believes he has prophetic dreams. Like he's like, he'll call you and like, don't forget to do your taxes and change your oil and like all those normal dad things. But like also just as sort of part of his character, he believes his dreams are prophetic. So I'm like, maybe if you believe it and you're looking for those clues, or you expect I feel like we could go into this for hours. Like Kim and Tehlor Kay Mejia, we're supposed to do an event about a book. Then we had this rambling metaphysical conversation about the significance of dreams, and no one got it.
Oh yeah, my mom also does that too. My mom also believes she has prophetic dreams. Yeah. It's actually a Korean superstition that if you have bad dreams, that they will happen. So you have to, like, we used to have days we just wouldn't go to school because mum believed that something terrible was going to happen, so we'd stay home. That was just kind of normal, right? Yeah.
And kind of
okay.
Cool.
Anyway, enough about dreams. Okay, so one of the things I love in middle grade, which you also do, and a lot of the Rick Riordan Presents books do, which is that we hide magical and mystical things in everyday objects. And I love that, right? Because it's about us imagining magic happening in our everyday lives. And I loved in the first book the idea of Dante's Arma de Alma being like a chancellor. Like I love that so much. And I don't know, there's maybe something about slippers being quite universal in lots of different cultures, including Korean culture, where slippers are a thing, right?
Yeah.
So I love that, and I wondered where that kind of came from. Like, I mean, on two levels. Like, one, the whole idea of hiding it in a chancla, obviously, where that came from, but also specifically about the Arma del Alma. Is that a Tehlor creation, or is that something that is already existing that you've borrowed to use?
No, that was a me thing. I made that up. I mean, obviously, the chancla is like the most fearsome weapon.
I love it.
Just so many uses. Like, you can thwack someone close by, or if you're like my great aunt, you have deadly aim from across the room. Like,
no.
Like terrifying. Like, you couldn't be in the same. Yeah. Anyway, awful. Still to this day. Yeah, but I love the idea, of just like everyday objects having this other significance. So like, I feel like the chancla is terrifying enough on its own without it turning into a magical, ghost crushing club. I could have just left it a slipper, but I feel like it's a little bit harder to do the logistics of someone like hitting a ghost with a little slipper and having them burst into it. Although maybe, yeah. Anyway, no. So yeah, the Arma del Alma though was a me thing. I love the idea of the tools we use for whatever our trade is being kind of like bound to us in some way. I've always really liked that. Kind of like when I make my altars and stuff, there's like certain things I do with like charging things under moon cycles or like different stones or whatever to kind of like, I feel like you can really imbue things with intention in real life. And so it's just like a lot of what I do in writing is like a really external magical version of something I do in regular life. But their role, Dante and Pao, in kind of like protecting their community, these are, the Arma del Alma is their tool to help them do that. So I thought it was really cool to have it be a thing that's really connected to them. Like, Dante is the only one who can transform his weapon, and when he doesn't understand how it's used, it will always transform when he wants to protect Pao, which I think is like a cool emotional thing. So yeah. I love it. I love the idea of just like connected with us.
And is there anything you can tell us, without spoiling anything, about Armas del Alma in this book, or not?
There's gonna be more than one.
Okay. We could leave it at that.
I feel like, anyone who's read anything I've ever written has to know that I'm not going to let the only magical weapon in the series belong to a boy. Like, that's all I can say.
Oh, okay. We'll take that. We'll take that.
Yes.
Readers are in for a treat is what I can say. So I'm always fascinated by where, for authors like yourself, writing this kind of mythical, magical, textured stuff, where your imagination ends and where the base folklore and stories kick in, like where that balance is. Because I find personally, I lose where that balance is. Like I forget where it is, and I just make them my own. How is that for you? Like, where is that line, and why specifically the story of La Llorona? Like, why her?
Like, the simple answer is that she's the story that terrified me the most as a child, that I really never got over. Like, still actually can't walk past a body of water without there being like just a little hint of like, like maybe not. So I think like I totally agree with you that there's this kind of nebulous barrier between like what is folklore from our culture and what are we creating, and honestly, what's the difference? Because I think folklore is kind of this incredible like multi-generational tradition of stories being told and changed and tailored to your specific circumstances. Like, I went to do more research about La Llorona because I was like, okay, like I know the version I heard, but are there more? And it turns out all through like you know, lots of Latin American cultures and traditions, there's a similar story. Sometimes, you know, she has a different name, the circumstances of the drowning of the children are different. So the story has altered and changed as it's been told over generations. And I'm like, aren't we storytellers that belong to our culture? Like, don't
I love
we
this.
get to influence the way our folklore changes too? And then I start thinking of it as like, we're just like a link in this long and incredible chain of like making myths and folklore come to life, and we're doing it for this modern audience. So of course it's going to change a little bit to like be tailored to the kids that we're writing for, but like that's how it's always been. So it's cool. It's a cool like anti-imposter.
Love that.
Because I would sit there and be like, do I have the right to like insert this thing or change this thing, because these stories feel like so venerated and old, but it's like they've always been changing. Like they've been changing as they're told orally or as they're written or as they're translated. And so like it's cool to think of yourself as part of that instead of borrowing from it, I think.
And it's humbling, right? Like it's that suddenly we're not this kind of, you know, person out there telling this special story that only we can tell. It's not really like that. It's this, we're part of a bigger fabric of storytellers. We're all telling the same story, but fitting for our time and audience.
Yes, exactly. And putting our own little spin on it. Like, I love the idea that maybe 5 generations from now, someone's going to be telling one of these stories that we retold or used, and like a little bit of what we inserted is going to be part of that. Canon. It's always been like this. Like, I love that idea.
I love that too. And, you know, interestingly, there is actually a version of La Llorona in Korean folklore as well, although it's not. Yeah, it's a very, very similar story, but not. Sometimes it's water related actually as well, but they're specifically egg ghosts. They're like these faceless woman ghosts, but who are suffering from the same pain of the trauma of lost children. But anyway, these stories.
I'm gonna have to read it now. I'm so excited about that. I love that though. That's my favorite thing. Is like, because I'm sure you do too. Like, you know, fan notes from readers who are like, I didn't expect to see myself in the story. I didn't expect to like, because it's not about my culture, but I was so surprised to find that like it's all stuff that I can relate to or that's similar to something that I heard growing up. And I think like, to get on my soapbox for a second, like I feel like a lot of our cultural stories are kind of put in this like other or extra category. Like there's the default stuff that you have to learn, and then there's these things that are so weird that you might, you know, but like to find out, it's humbling and great to find out that there's this kind of thread of shared humanity through all of cultural mythology that like if you get into it, you're gonna find something you relate to, and I love that.
Because surprise, surprise, we are all human. Oh my gosh.
What a
Did you know?
Opinion, Gracie. I don't know.
Love it. So my favorite character is, which probably not very surprising, is Bruto. Because I feel that our little chupacabra puppy is like a distant cousin of dogs, and I am obsessed with dogs. I think they're better than humans, and I adore them. And so I love him. I just love him. And I was curious. Well, actually, before that, I wanted to mention that specifically there is something that is around Bruto that's coming up in our anthology, right, later on.
The Cursed Carnival. Yes,
this is an old cover.
Yeah, oh yeah, there's a new cover now. I'm so excited about this anthology. Like, I love that we all get to be in it together. It's like everything I was just saying about like the connection of different folklores across generations, and it's all just like packed into this one book. How cool.
But you have a story in there about him, no?
Yes, I do. And I had so much fun writing it because I also love dogs and think they're better than people, and have 2 of them who are incredibly spoiled. And so if I had one complaint about the process of writing any of these books, is that I didn't get to spend enough time just talking about him. So yeah, my story is called Bruto and the Freaky Flower, and it's about Pao noticing that her buddy is feeling listless and not eating his favorite treats, which I feel like as a dog owner, it's like universal panic. Like, what do you mean you don't want food? That something must be horribly wrong. So she ends up having to go on like a little mini, it's like a video game side quest, I feel like a little mini quest. Cool. to, you know, Bruto is much like a regular dog in that he is stubborn and difficult to train and very affectionate and shows up at the perfect moment to emotionally support you, but he requires slightly different nutrition than a normal dog. So Pao gets to go and kind of dig into the chupacabra world a little bit more and find out what her puppy needs to feel better. And he does feel better, and he does not die. I feel like that's like an important spoiler.
It is important.
I would never do that to Bruto.
I am very excited for readers to find that story because, like I said, I love Bruto and I will support him until the end of the earth. So he's my favorite. Do you, and I know this is a hard question, but do you have a favorite character?
I do. It's not even hard. I always, and this is like true, this is my 5th book. And I like published book, and my favorite character is always the snarky, sarcastic side character. Like, they're the most fun to write. I think I put all the things that I wish I could say in normal life but don't have the guts to into these like little So yeah, definitely in the first book it was Ondina, who is like this Pao's like terrible, treacherous spirit dream guide who ends up she's a roller coaster of a character. I feel like it's like she's good, she's bad, she's good, she's bad again, she's good again. Like, you don't know. And then I missed her because, you know, she reaches her final ghostly resolution at the end, which I think she deserves. But it was hard not to, you know, have her to snark with.
And a lot of fans were, a lot of fans have been openly, you know, sad about that.
I was like both gratified and sad because I was like, I can't think of any other way that could have gone. She deserved her like eternal rest. She really But also, yeah, I missed her too. So don't worry. There is a character in the second book that I think really has many of the same qualities, but in a different way. So like Naomi was my favorite to write in the second book because she's kind of a very minor character in the first book that I got to like bring to greater prominence, and she accompanies Pao on her big road trip and definitely provides all the snark and sarcasm that I was missing from Ondina. So definitely enjoyed writing her the most, probably.
I love that. So I don't want to give any spoilers, obviously, but I feel very emotional about a character and what this character goes through. And I don't really know how to talk about this without ruining anything for anyone who hasn't read the book, but I just want to put it out there, Tehlor, because I was kind of at one point, obviously it was an ebook when I was reading it because I don't have the hard copy, but I was kind of like shaking the book, imagining me shaking you, being like, why would you do this to us? I felt so like fragile, and you know who I'm talking about, right?
I do.
Yeah.
It's so complicated, and it's hard to spoil. It's hard to do it without spoiling. But I feel like, you know, there's got to be some emotional devastation. There has to be. But it was hard. I will say it was hard through that in a lot of ways, and that it's not. I think I can say it's not forever, since people don't know.
Okay. This is what we need.
Yeah.
We just need confirmation.
Yeah. It's a necessary transformation, but not forever.
Yeah. Also, the most powerful books are the ones that can make you feel. You know, I truly believe that the roller coaster books are the best books, because they make you feel, and that's what books are for. They're for feeling the whole range of emotions. And I, you know, as much as I was shaking the book, you know, I mean, what I was doing was, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. I love this.
Oh,
why are you doing this
before too? Just so you know, there has been book shaking on both sides, buddy.
Oh, sorry. I'm actually a little bit coldy, so excuse my coughing and what have you.
It's okay. I have been talking. I talked for 6 straight hours this morning, and we have smoke from fires here, so I feel like my whole is sandpaper.
Oh, okay. But what were we talking about? We were talking about, oh, right. Characters.
Emotional devastation.
Emotional devastation in characters. There's another character I kind of want to touch on because I like actually giggled out loud every time. And I'm just going to put her name out there. Her name
I think
Emma.
you can do it. Yeah, Emma.
I'll do it. Every time Emma got screen time, I was just giggling because she is like the best intending ally friend. And every time she opened her mouth, I was like, come on, social justice warrior friend. Like, what have you got for us now? I just loved her. And I just wanted to put it out there. People are in for a real treat with her, aren't they?
Thank you so much. I love Emma. I really do. It's like, it's the characters that you intend to be like really sad. Like in the first book, she's just like imprisoned in a magical void.
Yeah, she's gone.
Book, you don't even get to know her. And then I feel like she just comes out of her little timid cocoon in such a beautiful way. I'm like, I think she's such a good, I mean, I want people to take from her that like, you don't have to be afraid to try. She just tries all the time. And sometimes she gets it wrong. And sometimes she's a little cringy and she has to apologize. But she's just like, she means so well. She wants to do good so much. And she's just willing to like learn and grow and apologize and get better. And I think we just need more. Everyone needs more friends like that.
Agreed. I'm just so glad you put Emma in there with that role in this book because like I said, there was emotional devastation and then the next minute you were making me giggle and then there was emotional devastation again and I just loved every moment of it. So I just wanted to put those two people out there. And on that, I am very curious whether any of your characters are actually based on real people or bits of pieces from real people or yourself, or are they just kind of people you've built from, brick by brick from your own imagination?
It's mostly building for sure. My characters are like a lot wish fulfillment. I feel like Pao definitely has some elements of me. I think it's hard, and I don't know if you'll agree, but I feel like it's hard to write a main character and give them nothing of yourself. Like you end up giving them, even when I didn't mean to. Like Pao initially was kind of like fan fiction for what I thought my daughter would grow up to be like. Because I was so not a space or science kid. I was like, Greek myths and weird books about like strange phenomena. And I liked the Guinness Book of World Records. That was like the closest I ever got to anything fact-based whatsoever. But my daughter, at like 4, when I first got the idea for this series, she was like getting really into science and like math and space and all this stuff. And then I'm kind of more like Pao's mom in the like, I'm burning the green candle and the incense smoke and the tarot cards and everything. So I was like, what is this going to be like when she gets older? Is she going to think I'm just like full of it? You can't prove any of this. It's useless to me. And so I was like, oh my gosh, what a funny dynamic. That was like my first big what if that led to the whole book was like, what are we going to be like later? And now it's so funny because she's about to turn 9. She reads these books on her own and has like opinions about them. Like she helps me figure things. Like if I'm like, okay, Avery, what would be interesting? Like if this just happened, what would you do next? And she gives me real ideas. Like she's gonna sue me at some point because she's like, wait a second, that was my I'm like, just sign here, honey. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, she's definitely was supposed to be kind of just like this funny, like, what if my daughter had a totally different life and was older? But then, of course, as I went along, I gave her so much more of myself than I even meant to. So that, but then everybody else is like, what would it have been like to have friends like this? Like, what would it have been like to have an Emma who would like stick up for you and like know how to talk to adults? Like, I didn't have a friend like that. I was terrible at that stuff.
Same.
Dante, who was like, I was always, even as a kid, like so drawn to the stories of like childhood best friends. Like you've known this person your whole life. I don't really know anyone that I've known my whole life. So I always think it would be so interesting to have a friend that's like really like not a sibling either, but like just a friend who's like watched you go through everything and knows you so well. And sometimes that's great and sometimes it's awful. And so yeah, a lot of it's just like, what would it have been like? And then I build characters from there.
I love that. Yes. But I'm also fascinated by the friends that have been around forever because they see all the good and bad, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, like how does that change? And anyway,
it does. I'm like, not to get back to the emotional devastation, but like what happens when a person who's known you your whole life and knows all the good and bad about you isn't wrong about you, but draws a conclusion that you don't like? It must be it's hard. It's such a hard
and vice versa,
Yeah.
right? What if they change and you mourn and miss a friend who's there but is no longer there?
Yes.
That part of it too. So anyway,
there's no
we can't go down that path too much.
I know. No, I was gonna back. We have to go.
Yeah. Okay. So changing take a little bit. You mentioned before that you get letters from readers who say wonderful things. Is there anything that you can share that has really left an impact on you? Something that you've received from a reader where it was noteworthy for some reason that you're willing to share?
Oh my gosh, I know, the perfect one too. I've gotten, first of all, so many. Every single person who's ever said anything. Like, I don't always get to reply to all of them, but I read them and they make me so happy. It's my favorite part of the job, 100%.
Yeah.
One time I got an email from a girl who had a little sister named PAOLA Santiago, who was like, yes, no kidding, like the same thing, spelled the same, everything. And she was obsessed with space, and she was telling me about like this girl's like whole life, and I think she had like recently turned 18 and was like going to school for aerospace engineering, and like was like, I saw this book at the bookstore and I just picked it up because it had my sister's name on it, and then I looked at it and I was like, this book is literally about this like, she's the same person. And she was like, so I got her a copy and she read it and she loved it, and here's a picture of her with it. And I just like literally, it's like, it almost makes me cry every time I tell the story. Like, I'm just bawling looking at this picture of this like adorable girl who's like achieving all the dreams that I would have wanted for this kid. It was just perfect. It was so perfect. I'll never forget.
I love that so much.
I couldn't believe
the
it.
actual name and the space connection.
Yes. Crazy. Just like, yeah, wow. Couldn't believe it. I was like, okay, well, I promise I didn't know that. I didn't see like, what an incredible coincidence. Yeah, no, couldn't be topped. That was amazing.
I agree that part of the job is the best, hands down, right? Like, because you write a book and then it goes out into the world and it becomes no longer yours. Like, it becomes this shared thing, and so to have feedback on that is so special, and not to be taken for granted.
I heard this incredible quote, and I wish I could remember who said it. I'll post it on my Instagram if I remember, but it's basically like the idea that the process of a book isn't like the reader finishes the process of the book by reading it and like forming their own opinion.
Yes.
That resonated so much with me, because I don't know if this is true for you, but like, it's the scariest part to me. Like, I'm quite comfortable having live in my own little, like my little cave, and like, it's just me making them do things. Like, I would be perfectly content to just stay there forever. And sometimes it feels terrifying to be like, what are people going to take from this? Are they going to like it? Are they not? So yeah, just to hear from people, not only that they read it in the first place, which I think is very cool, but then they enjoyed it and it like informed some aspect of their life, is just like mind-blowing. I'll never get used to it.
And the fact that they've taken time out of their busy lives to intentionally sit down and connect with you, it's that part of it that really blows my mind,
every time.
It's just so humbling.
It is. No, I know.
Yeah,
I feel like there's
humbling.
so many things we could stick on forever, and that's definitely one of them. Like, it will never ever get old.
So special. Okay, so one of the things that I know all the fans are so curious about, so I feel like on behalf of them I have to ask, which is that TV adaptation that Eva Longoria of Desperate Housewives fame is yeah, so is there anything you can and are willing to share with us
I wish
for those
there
who are like,
I'm so excited to be working with her. It's one of those things where like you say words, but they feel like they're nothing close to enough. Like, why is there a special word for when Eva Longoria from Desperate Housewives reads your book and it's like, let's make it into a TV show? Like, that's absurd. There are no, yeah. So where we're at, and you know, it's such a long process. I feel like as soon as you say TV adaptation, people are like, when can I watch it? And I'm like, oh, not for a long time, if ever. So I try to keep my expectations in check because I know it's a very long process with many, many, many steps, and we're very early in it. I will say, though, that I have talked to the people at her production company. They are incredible, and they've all really, like, gotten the book on such, like, it's terrifying. Like, we're talking about someone reading your book being scary, but someone adapting your book is like a whole, it's like, again, with The Onion, I don't know why I keep coming back to this, it's like the next onion layer of terror is being like, okay, I trust you to show my book to the world in a different medium. It's terrifying. But we recently got a head writer and showrunner on board. His name's Kevin Rodriguez, and he is amazing. I had like a really good like hour-long Zoom call with him, just kind of like going over, and he was like, this is so, like, my childhood was so similar to hers in a lot of ways, and like he's actually visited the Oregon forest that this book is like based on, and so it really felt super aligned in a lot of cool ways. So they're working right now on the script for the pilot, and we will see where it goes from there. But it's been just unbelievable. Like, again, can't even put it into words what it's like to have someone who writes for TV in their yard in beautiful LA being like, yeah, so this was a brilliant book and I can't wait to make it into this type of TV show. And I'm just like, no.
What is this life?
Imagined it. You hope that you write a book and someone reads it and likes it. You don't even know to hope for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. We'll keep everything crossed. I'll keep my fingers, toes, hairs crossed. And actually, speaking of hair, this is completely random, but I'm so inspired by the Olympics right now, people, you know, flying their flag. So I have the Rick Riordan Presents thing in my hair. Can you see it?
Yes, I can now. I thought it was just like
a ribbon.
Ribbon. You can totally see it.
It is a
so
ribbon.
Good.
But I'm flying a flag.
Oh man.
Okay.
It's so fashionable. You really are. And I just saw that Stephanie's in here, so I feel like we have like, hi.
Hi, dear.
Steph is our editor, and she is brilliant. And I don't know about you, Gracie, but I literally can't imagine the sorry state these books would be in without her. So thank you.
Yeah, no, let's not go there. That's a whole different type of nightmare that we should not reveal to others. Yeah,
no. Forest of nightmares. No.
Yeah.
Not even the brave ones. The forest of terrible first drafts. Let's just leave it.
No, we can't even talk about it. It hurts to think about. Okay, I'm really curious, and I really want to talk about this before we go into audience Q&A, about just who you are as a person outside of writing, because I find that so much of the stuff that you do so fascinating and so like from a distance, obviously, because I'm not there with you, but like filling. Does that make sense? Like,
yes,
heart
that's
filling.
The nicest compliment I've ever gotten. Thank you.
Oh, things like, I know in the bio before that card I read out, obviously you're a guitarist, but you also rescue dogs, and we've talked about this. Dogs are like better than humans, and you rescue them. That means you're just, you know, a hero. And then you also you garden, you care for nature, which is why I put this in the shot so that I could channel you.
It was the first thing I mentioned to her. I'm like, your plant, I love it. What is it? What kind? Yeah, get into a whole thing.
There's also one here.
Yes, I love that one too.
I
love those trailing ones. I'm like, is it a philodendron? Is it a pothos? What is it? We have to talk about it. I'm gonna go.
It's the first one.
Oh, it is. It's a philodendron.
Yeah, that one is.
It's so
yay!
Cute. I have the same one. Is it the Brazil with the little stripes in the middle? It's so cute. It does. It has the little.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a stripe. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I have one too. I'll send you.
So Like I said, I find so much of what you do to fill your life outside of writing, because writing is a huge part of our lives, but we are also more than our writing. I find that so heart-filling. And so I was just curious, is there anything you can and you're willing and wanting to share with us about that part of your life?
Yeah, I think it's so like that's the nicest question. Thank you. I think just like nourishing and nurturing things is like my main purpose in life. So it's just like anything I come into contact with, I try to like help it grow and make it better. And that's like basically my whole mythology. So yeah, I grow things. I'm growing, this is my second year growing corn, which has been like a really cool like ancestral reconnection kind of a thing, because it's such a like indigenous crop to Mexico. And so I've been growing like all these different types of heirloom corn that are so beautiful. Like I think we grow up with like corn on the cob and it's yellow, but you don't know. There's so many. Like one of the ones I'm growing this year is like rainbow glass corn. And if you look it up, it's like every kernel is a different color. And they're like,
no, this isn't real. Actually?
No, it's real. Yeah, I'll send you
I'm gonna look it up.
You should look it up. It's awesome. It's rainbow glass corn. And then I'm growing yeah, isn't it gorgeous? It's like
this can't be real. This is like naturally producing?
Yeah. You just like plant the seed and water it. That's all. Little nitrogen fertilizer. Yeah, so
wow.
And then the next one, look up one more. It's called strawberry popcorn, and it's like these little ears of corn that look like a big strawberry, and then when you they make popcorn. It's like the cutest, and you're right, it doesn't feel real. It feels like one of those cute like little fantasy world building details, like in this world the corn is many colors and sometimes it looks like a strawberry, but no, there's so much. Corn is amazing. I could go on and on and on.
Okay, you've actually opened up a whole world of knowledge in my head that now I'm going to look into, because I love corn just as a food like
you think you
source.
Do, but just you're gonna be obsessed, and it tastes so good, and it's literally and it just kind of like sent me down this whole rabbit hole of like, what is food supposed to look like? Like, what have we done to food? This is like normal stuff. And we're just like, oh, corn is just like twice the size and yellow and it tastes like this. And there's so many different, like, anyway, learn about your food, everyone. It's amazing. Grow food.
So this is a show about corn.
This is not a show about corn and puppies. That's all if I had my way, that's all I would ever talk about.
I love it.
My corn. That's the thing.
Well, to pop in for some audience Q&A, let's start here with what Brandon asked. Brandon asks, both of you do not shy away from giving middle school novel characters tough, realistic challenges. Is that intentional? And if so, you plan you plan to continue in future novels. Any hints as to what PAOLA Santiago and Riley O might face?
That's a good question. I think for me, it wasn't really a conscious choice so much as it was just like, that's the world we live in. And I feel like those are, the things that I faced as a kid, even less than a lot of people I know, because I have a ton of privilege. It seems like it would have been more an intentional choice not to include, and kind of a disservice to the kids who are reading the books, because you don't always get, especially if you're part of any marginalized community, you don't always get the chance to push pause on your real life to go on a fun adventure. Like, the things you're experiencing are all tied up with the realities of the world you have to face. And unfortunately, for a lot of kids, that world is a really scary place. So I feel like it wouldn't be doing justice to the bravery of real kids that have to face this stuff every day to shy away from making my fictional characters face it.
I have nothing to add to that. That is exactly how I feel for Riley O in my books too. I mean, they are, as a nature of who they are as people, as characters, that is the natural journey that they end up going on, because like you say, it would be intentional not to make it like that. Yeah.
Perfect. So next question is from Vanna, who asked, who was your favorite character to write about?
Yeah, we did this one. It's the snarky side characters all the way. Ondina, Naomi, and then there's going to be another one in book 3 actually. So another different one. We're just doubling down.
Oh.
But then yeah, I mean Bruto was my favorite because just I was training a puppy while I was writing this book. It was like all the stubbornness of Pao being frustrated that Bruto won't obey her commands is really based on my real actual life.
Wait, the snarky character that you're going to add in book 3, is it someone we've met before even in passing, or is it a completely new person?
Brand new.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Excited. Okay, I want to know who your favorite character was to write though, Gracie.
Okay. To be very unoriginal, I also loved writing the snarky side friend.
You do it so well.
Emmett Harrison, who is Riley O's best friend, I just love him. I just wish he was real so that I could hang out with him. And yeah, that's just how I feel. So yes, it's that part of me. I'm not a very snarky person naturally. Sometimes I try to, come across a bit more cool, but it just doesn't work. I'm not that cool. So that snark, being able to channel it through somebody like Emmett, to me is a lot of fun.
Oh, it's perfect. Perfect. Protect him at all costs.
Both great choices. I love Stephanie, who I believe is your editor, asked, I love scary stories and always have, even as a kid. What would you say to parents who feel that they need to protect their children from frightening things?
That's put us on the spot, Steph. No, I'm kidding. It's a great question. It's a perfect question. I think that scary stories are the first kind of safe way that we get to test what type of person we are. So in that way, it's a really beneficial tool to helping your kid grow into their agency, because especially, and I'm always saying this, like every parent, like read with your kid. My kid has read, and she's 8 going on 17, but she's 8. And we've read some pretty intense stuff. Like we're reading the Golden Compass books right now. She's read both of my books, but she's a little bit below the age level. And we have great conversations. It's like, maybe the stuff would be scary to her if she was reading it alone in her room, but like we're sitting there and we're pausing and I'm watching her, like if she's reacting in a certain way, I'm like, how do you feel about that? What would you do if you were in that situation? And they lead to such amazing conversations. And I feel like when she's scared, and when kids, I used to work in elementary school, so this is like a thing I've seen across the board. When kids are scared, if you help them navigate those feelings, they come out the other side of it feeling so confident, like way more confident than they were before, because what is more like confidence building than facing something you're afraid of and finding yourself equal to it? And books are the absolute safest place to start that process. And your kids are not going to be very scary in their lives. So like, why not give them the tools early to face that stuff before there are real world consequences?
I love that answer. This is a fantastic question, Steph. Thank you for asking it, because it's actually been on my mind recently, because my daughter is a toddler. She's a year and a half. And I have found that she's quite an anxious, like naturally, she's quite an anxious child, in that she doesn't love new experiences. She takes a bit of time and she just needs to, prepare herself. That's just who she is. And recently we have found that once she identifies a thing, once she can name a thing, it's just not as scary anymore. I actually think what's scarier is not knowing, because this stuff exists out in the world. Scary stories and scary things and scary life exists regardless. But having a way to identify it and have a space that's safe, like Tehlor said, to discuss it and talk about it. When you name your demon, it suddenly becomes less scary. So I think books kind of have an ability to do that, right? Like it names what it is and gives you a space to talk about it. And also, gosh, my throat. I've been watching this show on Netflix called The Gift. It's this Turkish series. It's beautiful. It's about like archaeological sites that are truly existing in today's day, but they weave this mythical story behind it, and it's kind of like weird and wonderful. And there is a seer in that show who, when asked, sorry, going into a bit of detail, but the seer raises this woman, this other seer, but this other seer was a child when the older seer was telling her all these scary stories. The younger seer grows up and then comes back to her and says, "Why did you tell me all those scary stories as a child?" And the older woman says, "I told them to you so that when you were ready as an adult, you could come back and ask me about the context, why these stories were important." And it was kind of this planting, this preparation for when they were ready to really delve into these stories. So there's an element of that too. I guess it's kind of like sensitization. So anyway, it's a fascinating question. Thank you for asking.
I know, that was a great question. I feel like we could do a whole panel just on that question. So good.
Agreed.
On scary stories for kids. And then Stephanie did note in the chat that she has an anxious son and found the same thing. Gracie, better to expose him than not.
Yeah. My daughter is anxious too, and I remember thinking the same thing when she was a toddler. Like, she really is like anxious about new experiences, and just through talking about it and helping her navigate that stuff, she's gotten like visibly more confident as she gets older, which is such a cool thing to watch. So yeah, I don't think protecting your kids from things really does what people think it does. Like, help them navigate things. Don't put them in a bubble. Teach them.
But that's so hard, right? Like, just from a parent's perspective, that's so hard, because knowing that you're putting a certain amount of pain, right, like scariness into the path of your loved child is really hard. But ultimately, it seems that that's what creates resilient people. Anyway.
Again, could go on forever.
Yes. Yeah.
So our final question is from Tiff, who asked, "What was the biggest challenge when writing this sequel?"
Man, there were a lot. There were a lot of challenges. There were like I was saying, the kind of like physical challenge of not being able to access my normal stuff. I couldn't go to a coffee shop.
Pandemic.
It's like a real fun time to be writing a novel locked in your house with your whole family. And just being able to, I have a really brilliant friend who was talking about how writing is kind of it's a form of escapism, you know, we're going into another world. And in order to do that, we have to feel safe leaving this world. And during this time of like, total hypervigilance, everyone's like, what's next? There's a new disaster every 10 seconds. Like, it's hard to feel safe enough to go somewhere else to create something like that. So it was really about kind of like cultivating a feeling of safety in myself so that I could even go to the place I needed to go to make a book happen. And then like within the book, I think sequels are always a little bit hard because you want to stick to the things people love about the characters and you don't want to change them too drastically, but you also want to give them room to grow into themselves and like attain new skills. And all of that is a really tricky balance because you want them to change in ways that will feel resonant and helpful for readers as they're going, but you also don't want to lose anything that people loved. And so it's just like a really interesting juggling act, on top of just remembering all the rules you made for yourself in the first book and having to like abide by them in the second book is very hard. So plenty of struggles.
Oh.
All right. So to wrap up, let's remind everyone that you can buy the book down there, right there in that green button. Click it, buy it. And yes, please do. And both of you, do you want to say like where people can find you on the internet? Any other books that you might have coming out, Gracie? Anything else?
Tell them about the mom-com, Gracie. I just want to hear more about it.
Well, people can find me sometimes on Twitter at Graci Kim, sometimes more often on Instagram at Graci Kim Writes, and always on my website at gracikim.com. There is a contact form there that I will always see the messages to. And in terms of books, I have the sequel to The Last Fallen Star, The Last Fallen Moon, coming out next year in June, and the the final book in the trilogy, The Last Fallen Realm, the year after that. And I also have my debut adult novel coming in fall 2023, which Tehlor, as she pointed out, is a mom-com.
My favorite. I'm so excited.
It's a mom-com. And honestly, I would love to tell you more, but I actually can't because I haven't quite gotten to write it yet. So I will tell you once it's done. But hopefully it will be a funny book about the new trials and tribulations of being a new mum, but also your own person and finding love and finding yourself with lots of good food.
Yes, I'm so
Love
excited.
that.
Can't wait for any of those. Yeah, I'm similarly rarely on Twitter at Tehlor Kay, more often on Instagram, same username at Tehlor Kay, and then my website is tehlorkaymejia.com. Instagram's the most fun place probably. I do a lot of like Q&As and writing craft stuff and behind the scenes, and I post a lot of pictures of plants and dogs. So if you're into any of that stuff, that's where you find it.
Great, perfect. One more reminder that you can buy the book right there down in that green button.
Thank you.
Thank you both for joining us, and thank you everyone for watching. Just a quick note that you can find more of our events coming up at Astoria Bookshop. We have a book talk panel next week with Adam Silvera, Madeline Miller, bunch of other people. Yeah, lots of people. And our bookshop's birthday is coming up on the 21st, so we have a lot of other fun events. So so check those out. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you both so much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you. Yes.
Amazing. And thank you everybody for coming to celebrate our launch day. My launch day. I don't know. It's like the royal we. I don't know why I did that. Thank you everybody so much. Awesome questions. I had such a blast. And Gracie, your questions were perfect. I appreciate you so much for being here. This was a blast.
Great. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Bye.